Let's bring in John Kirby, National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications. John, always good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us today. What's the latest on this? It's pretty clear that the Defense Department is trying to discourage this, and members of her party are as well. Do you believe she's going to take this trip at this point? What's the latest information that you have?
Well, that would obviously be up to Speaker Pelosi. We would certainly not talk about her travel in advance of it. That's really for her to speak to. And as far as I know today, there's been no announcement on travel by the Speaker or by her team. What we're focused on here, whenever she goes, wherever she goes, particularly in overseas travel, we just want to make sure that that national security team, which does include, of course, the Department of Defense, provides her with the facts, the analysis, the context that she needs to make the best decisions that she can. And of course, there's always a security footprint that accompanies the Speaker when she travels overseas. That is tailored based on the location and the realities from a geopolitical perspective. But again, I wouldn't get into that since there isn't really a trip to announce yet.
You know, John, hasn't she sort of put the White House in a difficult spot here? Because the president's about to speak with President Xi. We have a Taiwan travel pact that was signed in 2018 that was encouraging officials to go visit. So does the White House still believe that that act, that Taiwan Travel Act, which encourages officials and other people to go visit, is that still in effect?
Oh, there's no change of policy here in terms of American government officials traveling to Taiwan. It's not there's no policy shift here, and the president.
So she can go. You don't have any problem with her going.
There's no trip to speak to, Martha, so I'm not going to get ahead of the Speaker. I'm just saying there's no policy shift in terms of our interactions with Taiwan.
She's inviting people. She invited Congressman McCall. You just heard that in Jillian's report.
Again, I would refer you to the Speaker's office for her travel planning.
But clearly, it's a national
thinking.
Security issue because you've got the Secretary of Defense speaking about it. So clearly, it has to be risen to the level. You've got China saying if they don't want her to come. So I'm asking, what is, do we look at Taiwan and say, Taiwan, we have said that we are there to help you protect yourself.
Yeah.
We consider you an ally. So what are they supposed to think if we won't even allow one of our officials to go on a visit?
Well, again, Martha, you're getting ahead of decisions that haven't been made yet here. There's been no announcement by the Speaker of travel to Taiwan, so I'm not going to hypothesize or speculate about that. Let me just back up here and make it clear that nothing has changed about our adherence to the One China policy. Nothing has changed about our commitment to help Taiwan defend itself, and nothing has changed about our view that the status quo across the strait should not be changed unilaterally, and certainly not by force. And the rhetoric coming out of the Chinese side here on a trip that hasn't been decided or announced is unhelpful and unnecessary. The president's looking forward to his discussion with President Xi here in coming days. There is an awful lot on the agenda in this, one of the most consequential bilateral relationships we have in the world is with China. And there's an awful lot on the plate to talk about. The president wants to focus on those items on the agenda, things like climate change, things like tensions in the Indo-Pacific, things like Russia's unprovoked war in Ukraine. That's what he's focused on.
So is climate change the top of the list? You just mentioned that first. Is that the primary concern?
Climate change is absolutely going to be on the list when he talks to China, but I wasn't trying to give you the list in order of importance. I was just trying to go through a lot of the different items that are going to be on the agenda when he has a chance to talk to President Xi again. This will be their fifth conversation. It's an important, consequential relationship with China. It is also at times difficult. We don't agree with them on everything, clearly, and Secretary Austin has made it clear that China is the pacing challenge for the U.S. Department of Defense. So there's an awful lot to discuss.
Yeah, indeed there is. So just to put a button on the travel issue, just in general, is it the White House's contention that that act is in place, that travel, open travel for officials? So if a bunch of Republicans decided they wanted to go to Taiwan tomorrow, the White House would support that, correct?
There is no change to our policy with respect to government officials, U.S. government officials, traveling to Taiwan. We are committed to helping Taiwan defend itself, and on occasion, in order to be able to meet those commitments, of course, U.S. government officials have in the past and will continue to travel to Taiwan. Nothing has changed about our commitment to helping Taiwan defend itself. But again, there's no reason there's no reason for the rhetoric coming out of the Chinese side here. I mean, they're escalating they're escalating the tensions again on a trip that hasn't even been decided or announced on yet.
But all the more reason that if then, that trip gets canceled, it's going to look like they backed us into a corner and you all and the Pentagon tamped it down and said, don't go.
This is a very important relationship, one of the most consequential, as I said, in the world, Martha. And there's a lot inside that relationship. Things we agree on, things we know we can work together and cooperate on, like climate change, like terrorism, and things where we obviously don't see eye to eye, whether it's unfair trade practices, economic competition, certainly their aggressive behavior in the Indo-Pacific, as Secretary Austin alluded to. That's why it's important to have these conversations. That's why it's important, quite frankly, to keep the channels of communication open, and that's what the president wants to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just raises questions about whether or not, what the motivation there is with this trip and what it looks like if it doesn't happen. But I'm going to move on. Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, speaking just moments ago, says that he will warn Sergei Lavrov, his partner, who serves as Secretary of State in Russia, of course, that Russia will not annex the occupied areas of Ukraine. Your thoughts on that, the language of it, and whether or not it will have real teeth in Russia?
We have made it very clear in recent days that we know that this is the Russian playbook, that this is what they're planning on doing, is annexing by sham referenda and forceful political measures parts of Ukraine. They did it in 2014. We fully expect them to do it again. We called them out on it a week or so ago. And the day after we did that, Minister Lavrov went out and publicly said, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And we also made it clear that that's unacceptable behavior, that it won't be tolerated, not just by the United States, but by the international community. And we're going to review a full range of options available to us to push back on this. I mean, and I can tell you that the Ukrainian people are going to push back too, as they are on the battlefield today. They certainly don't want to see this. They're not going to sit idly by and accept some sham referenda or false annexation claimed by Russia. This is just another tool in the Russian toolbox to try to eat away and take away Russian territorial integrity as well as their sovereignty, and it's not going to be accepted by the international community.
John, aren't they? What does that mean? Not accepted? Wouldn't they be sort of testing that international community to see if we were willing to put boots on the ground? If they say, this is our territory, we've claimed it now, and Ukraine doesn't have the ability to remove them on their own, do we rule out the potential for U.S. troops to push them back to those Russian borders?
The president's been crystal clear, and nothing has changed, Martha. There's not going to be U.S. troops involved in the war in Ukraine on the ground. It's just not going to happen. But we have other tools available to us, so do our allies and partners, to continue to increase pressure on Russia. Look, Russia's economy is not doing well. The sanctions and the export controls have had an effect not only on his domestic economy, but on his war-making capability. Now he's talking to Iran about buying drones so that he can continue to prosecute the war. So he's suffering. And there are other tools available to us to continue that suffering and make it harder for him to prosecute this war and make it harder for him to conduct these annexations.
John, I want to squeeze in one more question for you. This is also from Secretary of State Blinken with regard to the release of prisoners in Russia. Let's listen to this and get your thought on the other side, if I may.
In the coming days, I expect to speak with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov for the first time since the war began. I plan to raise an issue that's a top priority for us: the release of Americans Paul Whelan and Brittany Griner, who've been wrongfully detained and must be allowed to come home. We put a substantial proposal on the table weeks ago to facilitate their release. Our governments have communicated repeatedly and directly on that proposal. And I'll use the conversation to follow up personally and, I hope, move us toward a resolution.
So there, discussion of a trade that has been offered. Will those two Americans be home soon, Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan?
We certainly hope so, and that's what we're working on very, very hard. Secretary Blinken laid it out there for you. I can tell you that it's topmost in the president's mind is the fate of Americans who are unjustly detained around the world, not just in Russia. Certainly, there's a lot of focus on Mr. Whelan and Mrs. Griner. We understand that, and we're working very, very hard on both their cases. So, I mean, the short answer is we sure hope that the Russians will accept this proposal and that we can get these Americans back home to their families where they belong.
All right. Thank you, John. Always good to see you. John Kirby,
You too, Martha.
Joining us at the White House.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.